business owner, working for myself, multiple businesses. I absolutely love what I do. I know we are in very uncertain times as families, as individuals, but particularly I want to talk to the small business owners out there. I've invited a friend of mine who I consider to be an expert in the world of insurance. His name is Mike Sollie. He runs and owns Mike Sollie Insurance, and Mike's going to talk a little bit about the world that we're in right now, the dynamic, the fluidness of it, what a small business owner should do and consider in these uncertain times. So, Mike, thanks so much for being here, man.
Oh, thank you. Oh, it's a pleasure, man.
So let's talk a little bit about the dynamic that we have right now for the small business owner in the coronavirus. What kind of insights or advice can you share?
Well, as you can imagine, my phone has rang more over the past 2-3 weeks from my business owner clients asking questions about their coverages and how they're protected in lieu of this issue that we're dealing with, not just obviously here in the U.S. but across the world. And the unfortunate thing is that when it comes to a business owner's general liability policy, there is no coverage on any policy right now that protects against quote unquote the coronavirus or any other kind of virus. There are some insurance companies out there with the way that their policy is written, the verbiage within their policy, within the exclusion section of the policy, it specifically says contractual virus is not a covered loss on a policy. And as a result of this, of course, I have fielded a lot of questions from not just clients of mine, but people that have been referred to me, friends and clients of mine that are attorneys that have been calling, asking the question, well, why is that? Why is that? And the simple answer, which is really a bad answer to give, is that we've never seen anything like this before. I mean, it's kind of ironic. Insurance, the whole purpose of insurance is to protect yourself from the unexpected. This is something that was obviously completely unexpected and that no one could ever imagine happening. I mean, I was talking to a client of mine 2 weeks ago, who's 85 years old, and he said, hey, I've lived through some wars. I've never seen anything like this.
Right.
So it's not that people don't have the coverage they need or that they're missing some kind of endorsement or rider. It just doesn't exist. Now, I will stress this based on everything that I just said. And I have, as a broker, I work with over 25 different commercial insurance companies. And I've talked with all of them about this just to be best prepared and what to say, what not to say. The one common theme that they have all said is, hey, if you've got a client that's questioning this, is thinking of filing a claim, let's say, for example, you're a restaurant owner and you can't make money, you can't have your business open. This coronavirus, this shutdown is affecting your business. You're not making any money. Every carrier has said, hey, look, if your clients want to file a claim, tell them to file a claim. We're never going to tell someone, no, you can't file a claim. We're not legally allowed to do that. So they are looking at things on a case-by-case basis because that's what claims representatives do. But setting the expectations, if you're listening to this and if you're wondering, hey, should I file a claim? Just be prepared to hear the answer, sorry, not covered. But I don't want to deter anyone from not reaching out to their carrier and asking these questions, because even within that, you'll learn. You'll get educated on about what's covered, what's not covered if you don't already know, or if you don't have someone like me who spends a lot of time educating his clients on what's covered and what's not covered. But simple answer right now, unfortunately, there really isn't anything out there to protect people from this virus.
Yeah. And for those of you who don't know Mike, Mike is what I would consider a nerd when it comes to insurance. He definitely knows his stuff. And
thank you. I'm flattered. I've never been flattered calling a nerd, but thanks, man.
Yeah. Yeah, you geek out on this stuff. And the cool thing about it from an individual or business owner standpoint is that I know for myself, you've saved me money on my policies. And I know that if anybody is looking to, cut costs and, trying to trim the budget, you probably can save them hundreds, if not thousands of dollars on their policies,
Absolutely.
whether it be personal or business related. So let's talk a little bit more, Mike, about exposures during this time. What should small business owners be thinking about?
Well, there's a lot of things that business owners should think about when it comes to their insurance, not necessarily related to this particular situation, which, we can get into later in this
Right.
webcast. You got to think about the industry that you're in. For example, I'm an insurance broker, right? I have an office. I have people that work for me. I deal with a lot of clients' personal, sensitive information on a daily basis. So there are policies and coverages I have in place to protect myself, protect my staff, my business, if heaven forbid something ever did happen where there was an adverse effect or consequence with a client or some situation. So there are policies and coverages that people can get in place to protect themselves from those kind of situations. As far as what we're facing right now, if someone's sitting there and they're thinking of their current business, or they're thinking about starting a business, and they're hearing all these stories on the news and on TV about, oh, this business is shutting down, and this restaurant can only have 50 people at a time, and this restaurant or business is closing early because they want to clean and sanitize, and everyone's having a negative effect with this. And you're sitting there saying, well, gosh, what if something like this were to happen years down the road? Let's say we get through this, which we will, and 5, 10, 15, 25, 50 years from now, this happens again. I want to make sure I'm protected. Again, there isn't a coverage out there that you can purchase, that you can add into your current insurance package to protect yourself from something like this. I personally would like to think, and I don't have any evidence, I haven't spoke to any higher ups at any of my carriers discussing this. Something tells me that in lieu of what we're facing now, even though it's too late, insurance companies will start to have to consider creating coverages for something like this. Because my adage I use a lot of times with my clients when we talk about liability coverage is, hey, if a dog bites once, it can bite again, right?
Yep.
We would be naive to think that this will, it's a once in a lifetime thing, because we both know it's not. It happened the Spanish flu back in 1918, right?
Yep.
And now we're facing it, now. Yeah, even though it was over 100 years later, for us to think that this will never happen again is naive. So we can only sit and pray and hope that insurance companies out there do start to create coverages for business owners to protect themselves from situations like this.
That's awesome. Yeah, it is very true. I think, we're in uncharted territory, and I think it's probably going to get worse before it gets better. And I think
Absolutely.
because we are such a global population right now. I mean, a good friend of mine just came back from New Zealand, other side of the world. Took them 48 hours to get home, but things can happen like that in an instant.
Absolutely.
So we always want to protect our family. We always want to protect our business and make sure that we have that coverage. So let's talk a little bit about the difference between general liability and professional liability, Mike.
No, that's a great question. And that's something that, at least in my experience, being in this industry for over 15 years, it seems like there's a gray area when it comes to the understanding of general liability versus professional liability as far as the consumer is concerned. And a lot of that has to do with not just the information that's out there, but how it's presented to people, how clients are educated by whoever they're dealing with. And not trying to point the fingers or say that other agents and brokers don't know what they're talking about, but there's a certain way of explaining that and driving home and giving examples for people to truly understand what the difference is. Because I mean, heck, I got a phone call 2 weeks ago from a fellow who got referred to me, went through a pretty rough situation with a former or current provider. And we're having a question about what he's facing. And he keeps driving home and talking about his general liability. How come there's no coverage for it? And the whole time I'm listening to this situation, I'm sitting there saying to myself, general liability has no place in this. It doesn't apply. The professional liability is what you need. That would pick up, the coverages for what you're dealing with right now. And this guy was unprotected. He doesn't have what he needs. So it is very important to understand the difference between the two. So general liability is kind of simple. General liability protects you from any kind of property damage or bodily injury that you may cause on someone or some client. All right. So for example, I'm in my office right now, and yeah, we have clients that come in and out of here all day long. I have a general liability insurance policy here for my office. The reason I do that is because what if a client comes into my office and they're sitting in the chair across from my desk and we're talking, and that chair breaks and they fall back and they crack their head on my hardwood floors and they have to go to the hospital? And they one day call me up and say, hey, look, Mike, I'm in this situation that I'm in right now because of you. I was in your office. That chair broke. You should have gotten it replaced. Didn't you hear it squeaking and shaking? I am liable for that.
Right.
And there was evidence of bodily injury. So my general liability would protect me from a situation like that. Let's say that I come to your house, Terry, and I say, hey, I'm going to come to Terry's house. We're going to sit down and we're going to talk about his insurance coverages. And I accidentally, bump into the gas burner knob on your stove and turns on. And, I did that. We didn't pay attention to it. And your house, as a result, burns to the ground. Well, you've got property damage that was caused by me, something I did. So general liability protects a business owner from any kind of property damage or bodily injury that they may cause on someone. Okay. Right. Very important to have. Now, the professional liability, this is in most cases the more important coverage. And this is why. Professional liability protects a business owner if a client of theirs has some kind of adverse negative situation as a result of following orders that their agent has suggested to them. Okay. That's what professional liability does. It protects you. If you suggest something to someone, you put a plan in place, you tell them, go do this, they go and they do it. And as a result, they are now in a bad situation. Right. There's no evidence of property damage in that situation. There's no evidence of bodily injury in that situation. So the general liability wouldn't, apply. But again, this person now is in a bad spot as a result of something that you did or didn't do. That's where the professional liability comes into play. And I'll give you a quick example, all right, just to kind of give you like an idea of, how professional liability kind of comes into play. Let's say that I've got a client who walks into my office and we're going over their insurance. And I look at them and I say, hey, Terry, I'm looking over all of your insurance coverages and what you have and what you don't have. And what I suggest doing, I suggest that you increase your deductible on whatever policy it might be. Auto, home, doesn't matter. I think you need to increase your deductible. You need to do that because when you have a higher deductible, it's lower cost, lower premium, and you can save some money. That's what you need to do. And you say, hey, great, Mike, you're the expert, you're the advisor. I'm going to take your advice and I'm going to do that. Well, then a couple of weeks later, you have a claim. And as a result of this coronavirus that we're facing, let's say your business is struggling, unbeknownst to me, and you can't pay your deductible, right? Now, all of a sudden, you got your insurance company coming after you saying, hey, look, you owe us money. If you don't pay your part, we might send it to collections. Or let's say the contractor that comes to your house to fix your house says, hey, we're not going to do any work because we haven't been paid. You haven't even paid your deductible because you can't. And then you call me up one day and said, hey, I took your advice. I did what you told me to do. And now I'm in this situation where I've got a hole in my roof and I can't get it fixed because of you. I did what you told me to do, Mike, and now I'm in a bad spot. So you know what? I'm going to come after you because I followed your orders. That's where my professional liability would come into play and protect me because of the situation that you're in. So it's very, very important to understand the difference between those two. And in some cases, I'm not going to say every single business needs both of those.
Right.
But if you're in the insurance world, if you're dealing with people, if you're making recommendations, if you're putting together plans, if you're putting designs together, if you're implementing strategy, if you're basically telling someone, here's my thoughts, go ahead and follow this to the letter of the law, right? You really need to think about if you've got professional liability or not. And if you don't, chances are you do.
That's awesome. That's great information. And if people have questions, they can certainly reach out to you, and I'll put your contact information below just a second. Please. But those are very important considerations. Let's talk about the consideration when it comes to workman's comp coverage. What kind of insight can you share there, Mike?
That's in my experience, that's where a lot of business owners get themselves in trouble from a financial standpoint. And again, a lot of information that's out there that, again, never knowing how it's relayed to people. But when it comes to workers' comp, okay, obviously workers' comp is protecting a business owner if an employee, gets hurt on the job and they can't work. All right, that's the whole, premise behind it. When it comes to a workers' comp policy, in terms of what someone pays, like the cost of it, there are two factors that insurance companies look at. Number one, they look at the nature of the work. They look at what the job is, or what we refer to as what's the class code. All right. So for example, I'm in the insurance industry. I sit here in my chair all day talking to people, looking at my computer, sending out emails. Okay. I have a certain class code for my job. Now, if someone calls me up and they are a plumber, whether it be residential or commercial, but they're a plumber, they're doing manual labor, they're driving from job site to job site, doing work, right? They have a completely different class code. Well, the cost for workers' comp, the premium that you pay is based on that class code, what you do. And as you may imagine, the riskier, the class code, the higher the cost is. So that's one thing. Second thing is premiums are based on the overall W-2 payroll that you have. Okay. Now, I get calls all the time from people that say, hey, I've got a business and I've got outside salespeople. I've got people doing manual labor, but I also have got people that are my administrative assistants. Okay. Our job is we need to know what the class codes are for what those people do, what their job description is. Then we also have to find out what is the W-2 payroll that you pay that person. Because again, the premium for workers' compensation insurance is based on the class code and what the W-2 payroll is for that class code. So we have to do some digging to find out what are you paying these people so we can give you an accurate quote and make sure that you're paying, the correct premium. A lot of times people will call up, specifically contractors, and they use a lot of 1099 employees, a lot of subcontractors. What a lot of people don't know is that for you to get your mainstream normal workers' comp policy, you have to have W-2 payroll. 1099 payroll doesn't count. So if you call me up and say, hey, Mike, I'm a general contractor, I sub out 100% of my work. I don't have any W-2 employees. I sub out 100% of my work. I'd look at you and say, you can't get your good old fashioned mainstream workers' comp policy. You're going to have to go through the rate bureau in your respective state in order to get insurance, because you have to have a W-2 payroll in order to be eligible to get a workers' comp policy. Now, where people get themselves in trouble is throughout the course of the year, if they hire new people, if they bring on more employees, increasing their W-2 payroll, if they add on another job, another facet of their business. For example, I sit here and I say, hey, I'm a plumber. That's all I do. All I do is residential plumbing. Well, 2 months from now, I bring on a guy that does hardwood flooring. And now I'm marketing myself to say, hey, not only can we fix your plumbing, but we can also replace your floors. Well, now I've brought on a different employee. Not only has my payroll gone up, but now I have a different class code. A workers' comp policy is an auditable policy, meaning every year, once a year, a consumer, a client that has a work comp policy, they're going to get audited by their company. And this is why. If I were to talk with you today, Terry, about workers' comp, and you told me that you've got 3 employees and you pay $100,000 a year in payroll, I'm going to give you a quote based on having 3 employees and paying $100,000 in payroll. All right. And let's just pretend that cost is $5,000 a year. So I say, Terry, you are going to pay $5,000 a year in premium based on having 3 employees and $100,000 payroll. Okay. That $5,000 is based off of that. So I'm only quoting you and writing a policy based on what you're telling me. And you say, hey, fine, Mike, not a problem. Let's rock and roll. Well, a year from now, you go through an audit and your insurance company shows up at your office and they're opening up the books and they're saying, hey, Terry, we see here that you paid $5,000 in premium because you had a $100,000 payroll. Well, we just looked at your books and it looks like you actually paid out $175,000 in payroll. Well, we charged you based on $100,000, but we see now that you actually paid out $175,000. You owe us more money. You didn't pay us enough. If we would have known back then that your payroll was $175,000, for example, we wouldn't have billed you $5,000. We would have billed you $7,000. So you underpaid us. Now you owe us more money back. That's where people get themselves in trouble, is that they do not keep in touch with their insurance company, agent or broker, and vice versa. The agent or broker does not keep in touch with their clients throughout the year to see if there's any changes going on. Have there been any alterations? Did you lose an employee? Did you bring on one? Let's adjust this policy as your business adjusts so that you don't get screwed over at the end of the year and you owe $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000+ in back premium. And that happens, unfortunately. So the big thing that people have to really think about when you're a business owner and you do have workers' comp, anytime that there is a change to your business, the red flag should go up, the light bulb should go on, and you should contact your company and say, hey, need to have a discussion with you. I just had a change. How does this affect my policy? So that is very, very, very important.
That's awesome. That's great information. I think a lot of times people just, it's not even on their radar. They don't even think about that stuff because they're in the business doing it for sure. And
absolutely.
And then that's one of the things I really like about you. And I've heard many other business owners that I know talk about you in terms of how involved you are. It's almost like a partnership that you have, which is really not like any normal sense of any insurance broker or agent that I've ever seen or heard about before. So, I just, really admire you and the relationships you have with your clients. We're want to wrap up. I want to ask you just one more question, Mike, if that's okay, if you have time.
Absolutely.
Let's talk a little bit about the difference between errors and omission and that professional liability.
No, that's actually a great question because we hear that a lot, and that term is used interchangeably even in my industry, depending on what carrier company I'm talking to. There isn't a difference. Professional liability and E&O coverage, errors and omissions coverage, they're used interchangeably. I've got some companies where when I issue a policy, it'll state professional liability. Then I've got other carriers that when I issue a policy, it will say errors and omissions. Same thing. It goes back to protecting the client from any kind of adverse effect that they have on someone or some client based on some recommendation that they give or some plan that they put in, any advice that you give. Okay. And one other thing that I wanted to suggest to you that I think is really important, again, just another example to drive this home. And I don't mean to beat a dead horse, but I think the fact that I'm still harping on this whole professional liability or E&O coverage thing kind of just speaks to how important it is. I want to give another example of something that came up, not with one of my clients, but just someone that I know that went through something like this. And it has to do with health insurance, medical insurance. This fella purchased a medical insurance policy to protect him, his wife, and his kids. And the plan that he purchased was based off of what his broker told him. His broker said, this is the best policy out there. This is hands down everything that you need. It provides this, it provides that, it provides this. You got nothing to worry about. You're great, you're covered. And this guy was like, wow, that sounds like it's almost too good to be true, when this is delivered to me on a silver platter. But it was coming from a licensed person in the health insurance profession. Why wouldn't he believe what this, broker had to say, right? I mean, as a broker, we do have, a lot of power in the sense that, people do latch on to what we say. That's why it's so important to be specific and accurate with the information that you give to people. Well, short of it is a person in his family ended up having a situation come up and had to go to the hospital. The short of it is this. They got a bill for $26,000. And they're sitting there saying to themselves, what? Excuse me? $26,000, something's got to be wrong. Maybe this is what it costs if you don't have insurance, but we have insurance. And this is what, this guy told me. And this can't be. Come to find out, the policy that the guy had technically wasn't even considered a medical health insurance policy. Oh, wow. He had no coverage for it. Okay. Now, in that situation, these people followed the orders of their broker. They did what their broker told them to do, suggested to do, sold them on this policy. It's got this, it's got that, it's got everything that you need. And as a result of that, they were then faced with an adverse situation that hurt them emotionally, financially, spiritually. Well, short of it is they filed a claim against this fellow's E&O policy, and the claim was approved. That is a very, very good example of how professional liability / E&O coverage can protect you as a business owner. You might hear that and you might say to yourself, well, when's that going to happen? I'm an honest person. I don't lie. I give accurate information. Very true. Very true. But how is that being received by your customer? it's very important with what we do, where I'm sitting, to make sure that people understand all the. That's why I like to give a lot of examples. I don't like to just to say, "Oh, professional liability protects you if you cause an adverse effect on someone." What does that mean? That's too broad. I like to give specific examples for people to say, "Oh, I got it. I understand that situation." And a lot of times, my clients come back, "Well, let me throw another example at you, Mike." And I'm like, "Great, do it. Yeah, let's talk about it. Let's make sure that you know what the heck it is you're paying for, right?"
Right.
So, again, don't mean to beat a dead horse, but it's very important to have. But yeah, to answer your question, which I should have finished like what 6 minutes ago.
No, you're good. You're
Yeah,
good.
the most long-winded broker you've ever met in your life. Yeah, no difference. It's both are used interchangeably.
Well,
Yeah.
I appreciate you sharing that. So if somebody does want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that, Mike?
You can visit my website, which is I think posted there. I'm assuming whatever I see, other people see.
Yep.
Yep. You can visit my website. You can give me a call at my office. That phone number is 919-845-2909. You can email me at mike@msianc.com. I do have carriers that do right throughout the country. As a matter of fact, I'm getting ready to insure a guy in Missouri. I'm located out of North Carolina, but I got a fellow out of Missouri that I'm getting ready to write his general liability, professional liability, and workers' comp. So yeah, no matter where you're at, if you got general questions, like Terry said, I am a nerd. It's quite pathetic to admit, but I love talking insurance. My own family, they throw things at me when I walk in the door. So they're like, "Oh, here comes the insurance loser." Yeah, what are you going to talk to us about today, Dad? But I enjoy it. So you got general questions, by all means, feel free to reach out.
Well, I appreciate your time. I know it's a super busy time for you, as it
Absolutely.
is for all small business owners who are struggling right now. Some of them are growing, some of them are struggling. But if you're watching this video and you're a small business owner and you have questions, all I can tell you is that Mike is the real deal. He's no BS. He's got the goods that are gonna he's going to do everything he can to protect you and your family and your business. So Mike, thanks so much
Thank
for
you.
being here. My
Thank you,
friend
Terry.
watching, thanks so much for spending some time with us today.
Yes,
Remember
sir.
this, my friend, there's something to be grateful for every single day. So take some time, spend some time in gratitude, to know that we're all in this together. And if you need some support, whether it be from Mike or from myself, reach out. We're here for you. Till next time. Bye-bye
Awesome.
for now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.